Another thing the webbot has so awesomely warned us about way in advance. Crop failures and issues like that with food. Economic Collapse blog, the economiccollapseblog.com, which is Michael Snyder's site. Global crop failures continue. In Australia, this is going to be the worst harvest ever recorded. Ever. Forever. Global food production is being hit from seemingly every side, thanks to absolutely crazy weather patterns, giant locust armies in Africa and the Middle East, and an unprecedented outbreak of African swine fever in China. A lot less food is being produced around the world than originally anticipated. Even during the best of years, we really struggled to feed everyone on the planet, and so a lot of people are wondering what is going to happen as global food supplies become tighter and tighter. The mainstream media in the United States is so obsessed with politics right now that they haven't been paying much attention to this emerging crisis. But the truth is that this growing nightmare is only going to intensify in the months ahead. In Australia, conditions have been extremely hot and extremely dry, and that helped to fuel the horrific wildfires that we recently witnessed. And of course, arson didn't help. And everyone knew that agriculture production in Australia was going to be disappointing this year, but it turns out that it is actually going to be the worst ever recorded. Australia's hottest and driest year on record has slashed crop production, with summer output expected to fall to the lowest levels on record, according to official projections released Tuesday. The country's agricultural department said it expects production of crops like sorghum, cotton, and rice to fall 66%, the lowest levels since records began in 1980 to 81. The continent of Australia is considered to be one of the bread baskets of the world. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, in 2018 and 19, Australia exported over 9 million tons of wheat to the rest of the world. But thanks to relentless crop failures, Australia has started to import wheat, and that is likely to continue for the foreseeable future. So instead of helping to feed the rest of the world, Australia is now relying on the rest of us to help feed them. And what is happening this year didn't just barely break the old records. In fact, one senior economist says that this will be the worst summer crop production the country has ever seen by a large margin. Of course, the rest of the world was doing great. If the rest of the world was doing great, we could certainly survive a downturn in Australia. Unfortunately, that is definitely not the case. Right now, billions upon billions of locusts are voraciously devouring farms in Eastern Africa and the Middle East. As I detailed the other day with the link here, giant armies of locusts the size of large cities are traveling up to 100 miles a day as they search for food. When they descend on a farm, all the crops can be consumed literally within 30 seconds. He links to something, and I want to see, is that a video or what are we going to look like? Maybe I can play a little background video, if it's a video. No, it's just it's one of his other articles. No video, though. Where is it at? The most effective way of fighting these locust swarms... Oh, wait a minute. The other day. In Uganda, the army has been called out to help fight this locust plague, but it is making very little difference. The most effective way of fighting these locust swarms is to spray insecticide on them from the air, but even that only produces very limited results. However, at least it is better than doing nothing. The United Nations is trying to raise a lot more money to get more planes into the air, because if nothing is done, the numbers of locusts could grow up to 500 times the size now by June. And the UN has said $76 million is needed immediately. On Tuesday, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, during a visit to Ethiopia, said the U.S. would donate another $8 million to the effort. That follows an earlier $800,000. And again, it's always the U.S. that pays and no one else wants to chip in. So, yeah, we're going to give you 8. The rest of y'all suckers, countries out there, y'all suckers, need to pitch in. The number of overall locusts could grow by up to 500 times by June, when drier weather begins, experts have said. Until then, The fear is that more rains in the coming weeks will bring fresh vegetation to feed a new generation of the voracious insects. Overall, these locusts are affecting nations with a combined population of nearly 2 billion, and the amount of food that these locusts are destroying is unprecedented. Meanwhile, China has been dealing with the worst outbreak of African swine fever in history. African swine fever does not affect humans, but it sweeps through herds of pigs like wildfire. There is no vaccine, there is no cure, and once African swine fever starts infecting pigs in a certain area, the only thing that can be done is to kill the rest of the pigs to keep it from spreading anywhere else. Unfortunately, China has not been able to get this outbreak under control, and the losses have been staggering. And again, we're not even talking about coronavirus right now. According to the New York Times, the number of pigs that have been wiped out in China already is equivalent to nearly 1/4 of all the world's pigs. The disease, that's a lot, isn't it? 1/4 of all the world's pigs. The disease was first reported in Shenyang, Liaoning province in early August 2018. By the end of August 2019, a year later, the entire pig population of China had dropped by about 40%. China accounted for more than half of the global pig population in 2018. And the epidemic there has alone killed nearly 1/4 of the world's pigs. But of course, China is not the only one dealing with African swine fever. In fact, cases of African swine fever have now been identified in 50 countries, and U.S. pig farmers are deathly afraid of what would happen if this disease starts spreading here. As a result of the crisis, pork prices in China have gone through the roof, and many families are no longer able to eat pork at all. Never before in the modern era have we been seen so many major threats to global food production emerge simultaneously. There are more than 7 billion people living on our planet today, and we need to be able to grow enough food to feed everyone. If we aren't able to do that, food prices will start to get really high, and people in the poorest areas simply will not have enough food to feed their families. What is the global population? Global population. According to Wikipedia right now, as of April 2019, 7.7 billion people. Although now it's saying worldmeters.info says it's 7.8 billion as of 2020. 7.8 billion. So basically we're touching 8 billion people. How many of these people are not counted? Do we really have 9 billion? You know, doesn't really matter. It's already a crazy number. And just to give you an idea, I'm going to now go to that same site, world population by year, worldmeters.info, world population. So yeah, we're pretty much touching 7.8, 2020. Going back down to 1951, there was 2.5 billion. Okay? 2.5 billion, which doubled in approximately 1987 to 5 billion. So that was 1951, we'll just call it 1950, 50, 60, 70, 87, so 37, I just want to log this, 37 years, 2.5 billion to 5 billion, okay? 1987, 5 billion, okay. So that was 37 years. To add, well, for it to basically double. And here's the interesting thing, though. Yearly change. You know, how many more people are coming online, so to speak? About 1%, although it fluctuates. In 1951, it was 1.88. By 1965, it was 2%. And stayed that way till about 1972-73. Then it was down to 1.98%. And it fell 1.77 back to 1.8%, 1.79. Then in the 90s, it was 1.4, 1.33, 1.31, 1.2, all the way up into the 2000s, 1.2, 1.19, 1.17, 1.16, 1.14. This is 2016. 1.12, 1.10, 1.08, and 1.05 in 2020 so far. So the yearly change is going down, but apparently it's not enough. So remember, 36 years, or was it 37? 37 years, 2.5 billion. To add another 2.5 billion, it doubled. Took 37 years. That was 1987. So 87, 97, 2007, 2017, it's 30 years. We only can add a few more to that to get close to that 2020. Again, we're at nearly 8 billion people. So it hasn't quite doubled like it did in the last 37 years. But it's getting close. And the bottom line is we are adding a lot of people to this planet. And the last thing any government wants to deal with is a hungry population, because the collapse of government could easily take place. Which, knowing what I know and you guys know, sometimes I wonder if that would be too awfully bad of an idea. For this natural process to just happen, we start over. But if we go that way, it's not going to be a pretty place to live. It's going to be a terrible place to live. Anarchy is going to come. It's going to be awful. It would be horrible. So, even though we do have a Trump in the office, Oval Office, he's cleaning house. That's your best solution. But even with him in there, if stuff starts coming into America like we're seeing in China, people ain't allowed to go to work, there's travel bans, foreclosures left and right, like, it could get bad enough to where people say, hey, wait a minute, beloved government. However, I will also say, a lot of people will sit by if Trump says, guys, let me deal with this, I'm going to try my best, blah, blah, blah. They will sit back and say, okay, Mr. President, because we trust you. But even that will only last so long before people say, hey, wait a minute. And there was an image, which actually I want to do a separate video on this, I think. Honestly. But I'll just say what it is now. Dick Allgaier did a remote viewing session. And this was a while back, him and the team, but it was his in particular that I was looking at. And he drew this guy standing in front of a podium. And he's talking to the people. They've got a live screen TV also. And then, do it live. Don't do it recorded. Don't do it in a camera. Do it live in front of a crowd. Makes it look more believable and real. He knows it's scripted. He knows it's a lie. Got to buy time. Got to keep the people calm. This might be Trump, ? And I'm thinking, was this coronavirus, trying to keep people calm? And Dick said, no, this was our data for the death of the dollar, the economic system, mainly the dollar, US dollar. That's what that whole thing was. However, I will say this. If it's caused to come quickly because of coronavirus and everything that happened to China because of coronavirus and now affects us, the result is the same. It's still a death of a dollar issue happening. So, I do want to do a separate video after this to talk about, you may want to go, even if you need to join for one single month, which I'd rather you join and stay. I like supporting people, the Crypto Viewing Team's channel on Patreon. In my next video, I'm going to talk about this video a little bit about what they just put out recently. You probably need to see it. Okay? If there's one time you thought, I can only afford to sign up for 1 month, this is probably at least the time frame you want to do it, because they got some interesting videos there, in particular one about this coronavirus, what their plans are, why it was happening, blah, 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 blah. And they got their insider guy talking on that one too. So I want to discuss that video, but I also want to show a screenshot of that guy standing on the podium. So I'm going to pull that up, get ready for the next video.